Kia ora and welcome to the Aotearoa Rugby Pod. Once again, a different set today. We'll go through why very, very soon, but a lot to talk about. The All Blacks, incredible performance, especially the first 20 minutes. What do we read into it? What do we read into how the box went when their big dogs came off the bench? What about the Eddie Jones effect? How long does he have to get it all right? We'll talk a bit of Black Ferns and we'll have our special guest for today come on. So, welcome to our new studio. Our old studio with a different couch while we set up a few All Blacks interviews that we're going to run over the next few weeks. Of course, James Parsons, Bryn Hall, just fizzing to talk some Test footy.
Oh yeah, especially that first 25 minutes.
A lot of fun,
yeah,
a lot of fun.
But good to watch.
Before we get into that, I'll let you know what's going on. So we managed to wrangle a bunch of All Blacks to come on the show in the weeks leading into the World Cup. So each week you're going to see a segment from this couch as we record them. We'll be in the regular studio most of the time, but we'll throw to the segment on this couch. We've got All Blacks coming through. Rieko Ioane, Beauden Barrett. Today, Beauden Barrett. We'll give you the big dogs. It's going to be really, really good. So, but before we get to Beauden Barrett, let's talk about this test on the weekend. Beauden was exceptional in that test match. Really exceptional. The first 20 minutes though, Chipper, for you, what was it in the first 20 minutes that really set the All Blacks apart from what we've seen from them in the last year or two?
Yeah, well, I think probably the aerial battle was one, like getting up. They came with that contestable game to get in the air and challenge, but then also the boys up front physically winning those collisions. They kept it pretty simple, like they just carry strong. I think best example was Shannon Frizzell coming out the other side defensively, so it didn't allow for the Springboks to get their mojo defensively in that dominance, and I think they grew a lot of confidence from it, the pack, and if you look at their stats as individuals, as in a group, they certainly won that sort of collision breakdown area for probably 50-60 minutes of that game.
Impressed, bro?
Absolutely. I think, man, we've talked about it a lot around the breakdown. And look, that first 20 minutes, guys they were a little bit tighter. I think they wanted to go direct and go through them, especially against big men. You could see they were a little bit tighter and just really concentrate on ball carrier and then cleaning. And then the attacking kicks, I think more so our contestable games. I think we had 11 contestables, getting 6 of them back, which is at 55%, which is, in this day and age, you're looking at kind of 30-25% is a good day, let alone 55%. And so we'll touch on obviously with Beauden, but his attacking kicks to Will Jordan especially. You look at his try, but then throughout the game, really, I guess, kind of their pendulum was in all sorts just due to the fact of that kicking game, and then also execution as well. And with the likes of having Will Jordan back, thought he was outstanding. And Shannon Frizzell, just backed up his performance, and Mendoza with another great performance, which you'd like to think now he'd probably be the 6th moving forward.
Where have you seen the big improvements in and around that clean out? That obviously made such a massive difference against a box team that's known for it.
Yeah, I think early on, as I said, they keep it simple. Like there's no sort of tip pass or looking to go out the back. It's literally the guy who carries, and the other two are tight. So they're not trying to spread the defence to, sort of take advantage of the holes. They're just clear that, out carry, cleaners are in fast, and, both sides did it pretty well. The Springboks did it well. And when we didn't get it right, if one of those cleaners got challenged, they did get the turnover. But it's that simplicity, and then to build to that sort of the tips and going out the back later when teams are fatiguing. But it's almost like they're decluttered, and having that clarity just allows them to be able to focus on winning the collision.
Is that the blueprint? This is what we're going to see from here on in?
I just think, like we talked probably about 12 to 18 months ago, the areas of where we probably needed the All Blacks to be better was around the breakdown area, which has been a massive improvement. Set piece, continuing to keep getting better in that, but then also our attacking kicking games, because this line speed pressure, probably before this year, we weren't able to get it to the edge, with this line speed pressure. But with the attacking kicking games, we've got Beauden Barrett, we've got Richie Mwanga, Geordie Barrett who can do that, David Havili when he's there. You've got a lot of kicking options that will be able to get to that space. So I think it's set up really, really nicely for us. And I know that probably that coaching group, the players and whatnot, would be wanting to continue to keep better at that. But what we are seeing is an improvement in those areas, which I think are going to bode us really, really well against the likes of the French and the Irish in the back end of that Rugby World Cup especially.
And I do think it's the work off the ball a lot. So if you look at that, so you got the pod, you go out the back to that player, you've got your winger right on the edge, and that's when you get the attacking kick. But because these players, sort of those midfield players, are having those really solid downlines when they're going for that kick, it sucks the defence in. So that's what allows them time. And as you saw, because of that defence, if you look at Will Jordan's try at the first, because of that defence and those bodies running in motion, it slowed kits off just for a second, and that's the hole Jordan went through, and obviously we scored from. So it's everyone's having that clarity of their role. Like there will be stars that stand out, but it's actually everyone off the ball that's I suppose, manipulating the defenders to create opportunities, and then people with the ball have to make the right decision.
And I think also probably the last 2 weeks we talked around everybody doing their role, but they're nailing in the execution of it at specific times. And I think probably in the last 12 to 18 months we have had opportunities to get the ball to the width, but we weren't able to get it there, whether they're not on the same page or not. But I think now it's very clear they're very decisive around their attacking kicks because the space is there, or they're going through with a tip ball, or there's opportunities on the outside and they're getting that ball to there. I think the very first try, it wasn't pretty, but they got the ball to the edge with quick hands and then a little offload, go in between, and then obviously Will Jordan sets up Aaron Smith for that first try. So I think we're just in a really good place of executing really, really well. But knowing that group, they'll be wanting to continue to keep getting better because they know what's at the back end of that Rugby World Cup against the Irish and the French coming forward.
And I think you mentioned set piece, and if you look at that, we're pretty clinical there. And big fan of Sam Whitelock, obviously, and probably surprised that we didn't see him out there, but man, tip of the cap to Brodie and Scott Barrett. 93% against the Springbok side with that. They're a tall pack, and to the throwers, of course. But I think that competition and that lock spot now is man, you can't leave Brodie out. His stats, he was 65% in game line carries. You need that to win a World Cup. So you have to think he's a lock. Barrett's similar. So, between those three and the versatility that Tupova'i provides, and Josh Lord was pretty effective against Argentina. So that sort of, I can only see set piece getting better because of that competition.
Will Jordan obviously set the game alight, but Bryn, there were some moments in there where Will Jordan does things that other people just don't do. His vision for finding opportunities, or his vision for having other people set him up for other opportunities is incredible. Yeah,
well, I think fortunately for Will, it went his way in the first 20 minutes. Sometimes, one side of the wing has a day and the other one doesn't. But look, I think his involvement in that first 20 minutes, man, it set us up really, really well. You look at the opportunity where he did the replay ball, got tackled, got back up to his feet, went through the gap. He's got that pace. We know that he's got that pace then to set up Aaron Smith. But I think it's just involvements that he has off the ball as well. The contestable games, honestly, chasing the ball and being able to get around the escorts, being able to get up for the ball, contest for it, get it back. All those kind of things is what you expect of your winger. And I think he's always going to pop up and have opportunities to go through that space. But I just love the work that he does off the ball to be able to put himself in positions to be able to, influence the games like he did on the weekend.
I want to credit Mark there as well, though, because if you look at statistically, him and Will had the same amount of carries, and just under metres-wise was Mark. And the work he does to come off his wing and get a carry or fight his way through contact and collision, although he's slight and maybe not seen as a power winger, he does have the ability to sort of come out the other side of collisions. Although Etzebeth really got to him at one stage. I was like, man, he's watched his highlights reel. He wasn't letting him get through.
Yeah. What about Richie Mo'unga? He obviously started at 10. There was a lot of chat last week about should Damien get another crack, Damien McKenzie. How do you feel he went in his role, obviously partnering with the other playmaking options, Geordie and Beauden Barrett?
It went very well. It was probably the best, I reckon, Richie and Bodie have sort of connected in knowing their roles, and there was a clear driver and a clear second man, and we spoke about giving the keys, and it certainly looked that way, but it looked like that obviously the week prior too. So similar to the locking situation, it's going to be a tough selection, but the suit, you've almost, I don't think they should make their decision now and then move forward with it.
And I think also around his goal kicking as well, it's been massive.
He's good.
He's obviously having a high percentage whether it become in any normal test match, but going into Rugby World Cup, Richie's kicking at a pretty good setup at the moment. But I think I agree with Chip. It's probably the first time we've really seen Richie and Bodie both doing what we need to do in different situations. With Bodie's kick, especially his attacking kicking game, even Bodie doing that little chip, Richie's flying through, so they're both on the same page, seeing the same space, and so. But I think the challenge now is really just keep those two together. I know you'd love to see other guys have opportunities, but if that's the key, you're 10, 12 and 15, that's the kind of pendulum around. You need those guys all playing well, having that cohesion. And I think you look on the weekend, it's a great start for those three guys and really driving condition. Plays.
And then you look at that last try for Will Jordan. It was a switch sort of kick move because they saw that defenders had overchased, and that's what it created. So. Man, you just got to, as an opposition now, you've got to have a head on a swivel, and it's not about just outworking. You got to work smarter.
I think even Geordie, he did a kick pass backwards to allow for the space. It was like they're seeing this thing 360. Was that not on purpose?
Not sure.
Not going backwards, I don't think.
You can ask him.
Yeah, they went to the man and he was standing there.
What it does do, when you've got guys that can kick, it's not just a 9, a 10 or a 15, probably all our backline can kick. So when you're previewing that, it's like, sometimes you might find on the weekend you had Bodie or Geordie or Richie kicking. Sometimes, they might try and change their pitches, but then 2 passes to the edge, Jordan might kick it, or, Lester or Caleb Clark have that left foot. So defending that and being able to have that analysis, it's pretty hard when you've got all backs that can do attacking kicks and long kicks as well.
And it felt like when Aaron Smith kicked, he only needed one blocker because it's like the opposition weren't there on him.
And they've done such an efficient job, the breakdown there with bodies on the ground and getting back to their feet.
Okay, as promised, we're going to be bringing you an All Black each week heading into the Rugby World Cup. To start off with, it is with Beauden Barrett. Unfortunately, Jipper had to go, so couldn't be there for this interview. But here is Beauden Barrett. Beauden, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, guys. Good to be here.
Just come back from Eden Park, maybe?
Yeah, look, I'm in all sorts. I've got a polo, stubbies and socks on, but it's been a busy day of these things. It's good to be here.
Nice. Awesome game on the weekend. Great progression from Mendoza, I guess. We've talked a lot around the breakdown area, and it's been such a positive for you guys in the last 2 games. But then also your attacking kicking games. I don't know how many times you would have done those attacking kicks, but you guys are operating like 55% contestables back or attacking kicks.
Yeah. So. Oh, look, as you know, the breakdown's critical. It's like set piece. To get dominance in a game, you've got to be going forward, and one way to stop that is to stop the set piece or slow the ball down at the breakdown or make us put in more numbers. But yeah, it's something that we see as critical for us, a set piece and the way we look after the ball, recycling and being able to play at a speed that we, I guess, feel that teams are chasing us, and that gives us the opportunity to get the ball to the space where we want it to go far more quicker, which, as you saw in the first 15 minutes, that was some of the quickest rugby we've ever played. And the challenge was the box. Of course, they adapted, and in the second half you saw a different, we were under the pressure a bit more, and it was probably more of a contest that we expected, and we didn't get the pay that we did early on. But the kicking game as well, it's so important these days with defences the way they are. If they want to come with some line speed, there's always going to be space somewhere, so how you expose that or find it sometimes comes with ball in hand or off the foot. So.
Yeah, you guys have. It's been an area like you guys have gotten a lot better in, because for a couple of years, probably 2 years ago, the line speed pressure that teams were putting on the All Blacks, you weren't necessarily you weren't able to get the ball there, whether it be through a pass like you did on the weekend, the bridge pass to Will. But there's been an improvement in there. Has that just been through the communication and being able to hear those comms that are coming in, or is it just you're seeing it in more preparation?
To be honest, I think every team struggled to attack line speed in recent times, and we're just getting better at learning how to deal with it, how to play against it. The comparisons between the way the Argentinians defend versus the box, it's so different. Like the Argies are probably the best at holding and pushing, whereas the box will come and be a bit more confrontational and try and shut down your time on the ball. So it was pleasing to see the way we adapted within 6 days or 7 days to the different defences based on the limited prep we had in the Springboks game. But we thought we knew how they'd defend, and it wasn't too dissimilar to what we've had in recent times against them. But what you get with line speed is less time on the ball to make your decision and execute your skill. So you'll have plans. Those will have to change if the pictures you think are going to be out there aren't on the weekend. And we felt that the Springboks kind of knew how we wanted to expose that space, and we could hear them talking about it. But again, it's up to you to back yourself to execute it and adapt on the go when these pictures change.
So a lot of it is heads up. It's not so much pre-prescribed. Yeah.
You do your analysis and you have to confirm it out there, but you always need plan B or option C because teams are getting good at changing pictures too. Like you'll look up in front of you, the ball goes into the scrum and the whole picture changes, so you call the move based on the initial one, but you have to have those overcalls to exploit where the changes and the spaces.
We used your example last week with Geordie's try, the going back down the short side. Now that obviously comes back to an action where I actually thought it was you that called it, but it might have been Caleb. But I feel like this All Blacks team, to start with, the last 2 weeks, you guys have just been real clear. You've looked like you guys have been just real direct, very easy, and it's been really, really easy for you guys. I'm not too sure if you felt like that, but it's been a lot better this year.
The coaches have really collaborated well on both sides of the ball, and the plan has been really simple in terms of not overloading us with how we want to play the game, particularly that first game against Argentina. The flip side of not making a Super Rugby final is you get to go to a camp and work on these things, which we did at the Mount. So we figured out how we wanted to play the game and the direction we want to go in, and what steps we need to take, the little tactical and technical shifts to allow us to play the game that we want to play. But yeah, it's a good start.
You talk about making changes. How much of it is a collaboration between the players and the coaches? Because obviously the coaches have a vision, but you guys are out on the field. How does it work when you are making decisions like that?
Yeah, good question. Obviously the coaches have had months and months to collaborate, watch other teams, the way and trends, the way they're doing things up north and so on, and the way the trends I've seen in Super Rugby. So they don't want to completely change the way we've been playing in Super Rugby, but in the All Blacks you do things a certain way, and essentially they'll give us a structure or a framework to play to, and you've got 2 or 3 things within that. That's our DNA, and will give us opportunity to play, and that's where Joe Schmidt's been really good for our attack, and Fozzie's been great around the structural way we want to play from set piece strikes and so on. So they're working really well together, and in defence we've made little changes too. So I think what we're getting is complete buy-in. Everyone's on board. Everyone wants to be there at the business end of the season, and it's a good start. It's only a start, but to beat the Boks and Argentina in the first 2 weeks, we've got to be happy that we're going in the right direction.
Yep. Maybe going to give us a little bit of an insight around maybe defensively what you're doing in the backfield and trying to help out your wingers and how much communication you have to do.
I know as a 10, playing fullback, how much I rely on outside comms. But yeah, the defensive part of the game and the backfield, like it's very important. Often sitting at home on TV, you wouldn't see us. But the amount of running we're doing, covering space, because ultimately that's what you're looking for in a game of rugby.
This might sound like a silly question. How easy is it to actually communicate? Their backs are to you? You're right behind them?
No, seriously, the noise of the stadium. You play in a place like Mendoza. Look, if they get up early on a scoreboard, it's going to be a festival. Like, it's going to be carnage. Like, you won't be able to hear your mate 10 metres away if they get going in terms of singing and so on. So starting well, getting on top of the voice, and that fuels them. So important to start well. When we did that, like, you could hear a pin drop. Communicating was so easy, which is so rare. You won't get that in France or in New Zealand or basically anywhere else. So hand signals, body language, little cues on the run, like, critical, because yes, 13 guys in front of me are facing that way. There's a lot of eye contact, there's a lot of hand signalling, but you come off the game like you know what it's like. Sometimes you don't have a voice, or you're exhausted, and you're screaming the whole game.
It sounds as mentally exhausting as it is physically.
Yeah. Test rugby, it's intense. It is mentally exhausting. A lot goes into a test week. And yeah, ultimately on a Saturday you want to be having fun and going out there and expressing yourself, but it's important stuff.
Just to go, I'm not obviously on the edge, but being in Japan, have been on the edge and understanding like a fullback or a 10 in that backfield, that pendulum, if they're really clear with you, having micro comms, saying you've got last or you're second to last in, just the guy on the edge, it's really, really easy for them to go make a decision. It's really hard if you're not saying anything and then you're like, oh, is he there? And then that's all that indecision. I can imagine at test level Bodie that, if you miss that there, it's a bridge pass or it's been able to get, a lot of metres.
Absolutely. And ultimately you just want certainty, and when you're certain you can go up and put a good shot on, or whenever there's indecision or lack of trust, like that's when you get exposed. So and there's different combinations with that too, different wingers, and that was the great thing about the first two tests. We saw Caleb and Amoni in the first, and then Will and Mark. So I think when you meet during the week, you're always talking about the same stuff, but you can't take it for granted going into the next week. So you start all over again. You have the same cues, the same comms. Like you build this really tight connection. The outsides meet, the insides meet, but there's so many different variables. You can't brush over it. You can't ever assume it's going to happen the next week. It's a lot goes into it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, mate. We really appreciate your time.
Oh, good to chat.
So good to have Beauden Barrett on. It's going to be really interesting to see how he goes against Australia and how they can handle that kicking game, Jipper.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, the beauty is his clarity. He's 15 now. We were talking about maybe potentially giving Sean Stevenson the role, but it's exciting for, he may fill in at 10, but having that knowledge, of just, I'm an out-and-out 15 now, I feel like it's making him better and better.
Cool. What did you see from the Australians on the weekend that made them lose to Argentina? I mean, Eddie Jones, what did he say? He made a bizarre quote that they weren't able to sustain their fluency, but there is a plausible reason, but he's not going to tell us. What could that plausible reason be that they're not doing
The plausible
right?
reason is he wants you and everyone else to be thinking what the reason is, so it distracts away from what the problems are.
Yeah.
I think the last 2 weeks their discipline, and Eddie's actually called them errors. So they're doing a lot of errors when it's coming to their game at the moment. Look, I think some of the stats here, I think 14 penalties overall, 15 turnovers as well. The Argentinians in the first 50 minutes were inside the 22 area for 5.5 minutes, whereas the Australians had 33 seconds. And so the amount of times that the Argentinians were able to be inside that 22, being able to build pressure, felt like they used their gas tank around the Australians. And so I think for their biggest thing has been able to get their discipline right, which has been actually a trend for probably the last couple of years, even under Dave Rennie. So when you're giving up ball almost 30 times a game, and the Argentinians, I thought, had times where they were able to hold on to the ball for long periods of phases. And it kind of, to be honest, Marky Mark, they call him in Australia, who had an outstanding game. I thought won it at the end, but probably would have glossed over all the areas that I've just touched on. That those are the things that I think they need to work on moving forward.
I think whether errors or ill discipline, it doesn't matter. Like accuracy at the breakdown, we've harped on about it, and they're off. Like in terms of their decision, and it's even little things like they're clearly on the ground and they put a hand out, and the ref's just it's just lazy around that sort of decision making. The decision making you've got to make, is it a dominant tackle? Am I going to win the race in? Am I going to be a genuine attempt to get on the ball? And at the moment, they're sort of pushing the envelope. And I think there's an element of it that it's a new coaching group and they're wanting to press, and clearly everyone said, look, everything's open, spots are up for grabs. And it can sometimes work for you, but in this case, I feel like players are probably over trying to make the big impact, which is leading to, similar penalty counts. And then I haven't seen a ruck stat this low at international rugby. 88% they won on their own ball at ruck time. So, Argentina were at 90%, the All Blacks were at 97%, the Springboks were at 97%. I've never seen it go into the 80s in terms of losing your own attacking breakdown. So there's some serious work to do, and I do think you can put that down because it's not a skill set thing. Like the players can clean rucks, but there's a lot of new systems. To me, it looks so cluttered, and just so much is going on in terms of the decisions they're making, and then they're chasing their tail. On the flip side, for them, defensively, 91%, and they made RG work and work and work. So in an area that shows attitude, I think you can have confidence that they're all there fronting up. I think on attack, they can be a bit better, and then around that defensive breakdown, they can be a little bit smarter around when there's an opportunity and when there's not, because they should trust their D. 91% making nearly over 200 tackles is outstanding at international level.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing you can obviously see if you care, or your element of you care about the jersey. And so we've talked about winning championships and big games. You're based around your defence, but I think you're spot on, Chip. Those kind of numbers. As a halfback at Nick White, you'd be thinking, geez, give me some good ball, And so decluttering, and sometimes when we've had games, or you've had games like that, Chip, when there's a lot going on in your brain, you're thinking about your role, you're not thinking about right then and there, and you're not really decisive around what your role is. So you'd like to think they might lean up their menu, and so the meaning of menu around leaning up their attack strategy of their lineouts as possibly, or their scrums, making it really, really simple. So when you're going into that cleanup, because they're playing against the South Africans next, they're playing against New Zealand next, and so if you don't get that breakdown right, and you're not there early to be able to, do what the New Zealand team, the All Blacks, are doing at the moment, you're going to start seeing numbers like that. And I think just the decision making around the breakdown as well. Eddie Jones said we're really poor. They're really poor at making decisions around what you should be doing in those situations. So he's got a lot of work.
Don't put your hands in.
Now, we also saw an interesting performance on the weekend from the Black Ferns. They'd made a lot of changes. They were under a lot of pressure against the USA early on in their game in the Pacific Nations.
Discipline, like the red card was for the whole game, then another yellow. But the one thing they'll be wrapped with, and led by their skipper and Ruahei Demont, like the comeback and the impact they got off the bench from their senior players was exceptional and was the difference.
Yeah, you talk around playing without a 9. It's really, really hard to start the game and also finish the game. Rosie Kelly's played a little bit for Matatu and for Canterbury, but anytime you lose a driver, it took them a little bit of time. You look at it was 17-5, I think. And the way they were able to bring their bench on, like you talk about, Renee Holmes, Demont, and those kind of girls coming on and being able to, go over the top of them. It'll be pleasing for that coaching staff, but at the same time, we probably thought if there wasn't the red card, it'd be a little bit of a different result. But it's great for that tour, being able to experience something different, being able to play with 14 women, and being able to be solution focused around how you get better and how you win that game. And I guess their bench came on and were able to do that.
We saw the impact of a red card at the World Cup final. It is big when you lose. It doesn't matter what position. So, going into the World 15, they need to make sure that they get their technique right.
Yeah, they got one game against Australia before then, but I don't think there's any worry about how the top team's going.
No, it's very slick, and good to give them some rest, in terms of managing this season. Yeah,
it's been a pretty impressive start for them for this year, coming off the back of a lot of change.
New coaching group and stuff that. You've got to admire the coaching group in terms of how, we've sort of spoken about Jace Ryan and how he's decluttered. Well, clearly they're pretty clear, and you've spoken extremely highly of Mike Delaney. We've got a long relationship with Steve Jackson, and they're good operators.
And they're doing the business.
May it continue.
Chipper, before we go, you're going to do some business over in the USA. Talk us a bit through what you're going to do.
So getting an opportunity to sort of go into a few of the sporting franchises over there. I won't labour the point. Probably can do it when I'm getting back, but really interesting sort of an information sharing opportunity, and hopefully come back with plenty of little carrots and bundles of joy I can share on here.
Oh man, you're going to have the notebook out. How many notebooks are you taking?
Mate, this one's staying. I've got a fresh one for the trip. I've got a fresh one ready to rock and roll.
Awesome. Well, enjoy the trip, mate. We'll see you very, very soon. And Bryn, as always, thank you very much.
No problem, man. Good to be here.
And thank you all for joining us once again on the Aotearoa Rugby Pod. Remember, we're going to have more All Blacks coming in the weeks to come. Rieko Ioane, Beauden Barrett, Ofa Tuangafasi, a whole list of All Blacks that you can get a bit of insight into what they are into and how they're going to play and how this Rugby World Cup is shaping up for the All Blacks. So thank you once again for joining us. Please get in contact in the YouTube comment section. Send us an email, aotearorarugbypod@sky.co.nz. We'd love to hear from you and engage with you. But thank you very much once again for joining us. Mā te wā.